A couple years ago, I tried to break 10,000 damage in a Wobot. I got to 10,000 raw damage, but because resistances are a thing, we fell slightly short. Since then, 3 new weapons, 1 passive, and 1 useful passive have been added to the game. With this comes 2 new status effects and the extension of battles to 25 turns. Surely we can break 10,000 now, right? Well, unfortunately, the multipliers of the new weapons are pretty small. Of course, they're not weak in the slightest, they're actually defining the meta currently. A meta which I somehow called 2 years ago. But for single move damage, it's a bit disheartening. After all, the Leeching Scythe does less total damage than the bow, even with its buff, and for Absolve shenanigans, which was the closest we got last time, it actively hinders healing. And the P-Staff, well, it just kinda has a 100% multiplier even at Fabled. The Rune of Celebration scales off of res, which itself falls off pretty heavily in terms of how much you gain per level, and it also has pretty weak multipliers overall due to the fact that it has to replenish and heal at the same time. So, does it look like a 10k hit is impossible? Well, hold your horses. I did say there's one useful passive. And a change that actually helped us was that Banner got buffed to 25, 35, and 50% on its attack buffs. So, let's get into it. To be honest, with just the Banner buff, I'd say V-Staff Absolve strats push us past 10k. But of course, I wouldn't make a video on just that. For old time's sake, however, let's do the math. Assuming that your Banner pet died the round before and freshly applied Attack++, this round will have the lingering buff while getting the Banner pet out of the way. This is necessary because V-Staff splits healing between all alive party members. So, with 1 dead, we now have 1 more pet to kill, and that would be done with Thorns. This turn, V-Staff Fish, buffed by Banner, attacks 3 gems, and conveniently, one of the gems has Kami, taking the fish out, leaving our double Absolve Orb Holder to receive all the healing. Running the fish's magic through V-Staff Multiplier, times 3 targets, critting, and being buffed by Attack++, and then going into gem resistances, gives us the total damage the fish deals, which is converted into healing. We then run this healing into the double Absolve Orb, Attack++, and finally into the gem's resistances, giving us 15,431 damage, blowing our previous attempt out of the water. But we're not here to just break 10k. I want to push it even further beyond. Like I said, one passive that was introduced was actually useful, and that was Sacrifice. Sacrifice gives us the first ever healing based on max HP, and it's a replenish based on max weapon points. No longer are we limited by the magic stat, we now get to use a 15 HP custom Patreon. Double Sacrifice gives us 150% of our 3500 max HP, which is 5250. Wait, that's nothing. That's barely more than the V-Staff healed before crit. The V-Staff crit healed for 7654. It's not even worth running the calculations on the double Absolve Orb. But worry not, for I did not waste our time. Remember last video when I said Discharge was held back by the fact that there's no high weapon point replenish? Well, Sacrifice fixes that, so let's plug the numbers. We have a 15 weapon point custom Patreon with the same base of 3500, but with weapon points instead of HP, with Sacrifice giving us replenish of 5250. But the Discharge multiplier is at 140%, giving us a 2.8 total multiplier. Running that through our Vanguard banner and magic resistance, we get 18,522, practically doubling our attempt from the last video. And this brings to my attention that the math in my last video was a little low, and I think I might have forgotten to crit on the heal last time. Don't worry though, because even with an extra crit, Sac Discharge blows it out of the water. But let's be real, no pet has 5200 health or weapon points, and I don't think Discharge and Absolve counts for over replenish or over heal. Practically speaking, the highest weapon points you can have is 3500, but with the Rune of the Forgotten increasing all stats by 15%, we can get that up to 4025. But how do we get rid of the weapon points when they have Rune, which takes none to use? That's where A-Wand comes in. Everybody's favorite weapon comes to the rescue. But seriously, with some contrived ass healing, a lot of RNG, and a lot of weapon point transfer, we can empty the 4025 weapon points to replenish just that much for our pet. And the damage thus would be almost exactly 14,200 damage. GG, we still beat 10k.